The room was filled with laughter, balloons, and the smell of a store-bought cake. Everyone stood around with forced smiles, pretending they cared. My daughter, just 8, sat in the center, her eyes sparkling with innocence and hope. She had waited all week for this moment, her birthday. Her tiny hands reached for the gift box wrapped in shiny gold paper, the only one with her name on it. Everyone watched as she slowly untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. It was empty. There was a long, agonizing pause. Her smile froze in confusion. She blinked twice, looking back inside as if maybe something had fallen out. Nothing. Just a hollow box. Then came the laughter. It started with a low chuckle from the corner, where my father sat with his whiskey glass, legs crossed like a king surveying his court. He leaned back and laughed louder this time, tapping his glass on the table. "Kids like her shouldn't expect anything," he said coldly, his voice slicing through the room like a knife. Some of the guests exchanged awkward glances, but no one said a word. My daughter looked up at me. Her eyes didn't cry, but they glistened with the kind of heartbreak no child should ever know. Then my sister chimed in, smirking, just like her mother, worthless. She didn't even lower her voice. She said it so casually, like an inside joke. And just like that, the echo of their cruelty wrapped around my daughter like a cold wind. I wanted to speak, to scream, but the words got stuck in my throat. I saw her little hands trembling as she closed the box and placed it gently beside her. She looked at no one. Not my father, not my sister, not even me. But then, something remarkable happened. She stood up, took a deep breath, and walked over to my father. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Everyone watched, unsure what she would do next. Her voice was quiet but clear. "It's okay," she said softly. "I got you a gift too, Grandpa." She pulled a small, neatly wrapped envelope from the pocket of her dress. It was simple, with a red ribbon around it. She handed it to him with both hands, looking him straight in the eye. My father chuckled again, still amused. "What is this?" "A drawing?" he mocked, unwrapping it lazily. The moment his eyes landed on the paper inside, everything changed. His face turned pale. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands began to tremble. His lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. He looked up at her, really looked at her, for the first time in his life. And in that instant, the room felt like it had frozen in time. Everyone leaned forward. Confused. Curious. What was in that envelope? What could a child possibly give that would shake a grown man to his core? And that's when I knew this wasn't just a birthday gift. It was the beginning of something much, much bigger. Growing up in my father's house was like living inside a storm, one that never passed. He wasn't just strict. He was cruel in a way that made you question your worth every single day. Control wasn't something he used occasionally. It was his identity. Every meal, every word, every decision had to be filtered through his command. And in his eyes, there was only one child who ever deserved to be celebrated, my sister. She was the golden girl. The daughter who could do no wrong. If she dropped a plate, it was the plate's fault for being too fragile. If I aced an exam, he'd say the teacher probably graded me out of pity. When she demanded gifts, she got gold. When I asked for a book, he called me ungrateful. The difference in treatment wasn't just visible, it was proudly announced. And yet, I tried. I smiled when he ignored me, studied harder when he told me I'd never succeed, and helped around the house while my sister lounged like royalty. I thought maybe, just maybe, one day he'd look at me the way he looked at her. But that day never came. Even after I got married and moved out, his voice haunted me. At family gatherings, he'd say in front of everyone, "She finally found someone desperate enough to take her." My husband would squeeze my hand under the table, silently reminding me that I was loved, but my father's words stayed long after the guests left. When my husband died in a car crash, everything fell apart. I had nowhere to go. No support system. Just a widow with a 6-year-old daughter and a lifetime of emotional scars. I had to return to the one place I never wanted to go back to, my father's house. But this time, I didn't come alone. He let us in, but not with warmth, more like someone allowing a stray dog inside during a storm. From that day, I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a servant. I cooked, cleaned, ran errands, and took orders. And my daughter watched it all. Watched me being scolded like a child. Watched my sister float through life with makeup, manicures, and meaningless praise. She had her own room, designer bags, breakfast in bed. We slept in the attic with a leaky roof and a thin mattress on the floor. But my daughter never complained. She just watched. She saw it all. Absorbed every insult. Every eye roll. Every time her mother was told she was nothing. And somewhere deep inside her, something stronger than pain began to grow. Every morning began the same way. My daughter and I would wake up before anyone else, our room still cold from the night before, and head down quietly so we wouldn't disturb the real family. I'd prepare breakfast for everyone, toast perfectly browned, eggs just the way my sister liked, and warm milk for her children served in cartoon mugs. My daughter? She got what was left, sometimes just crumbs, sometimes nothing. She never asked. She'd just nod when I told her to be patient. My father never acknowledged her presence. He would walk right past her as if she were invisible. No good morning, no eye contact, not even a glance. But if my sister's kid so much as sneezed, he'd rush over with tissues and a smile. They had everything, tablets, toys, new clothes every week. My daughter had outgrown shoes and faded uniforms. When her school requested a new project kit, I overheard my father laughing, "Why waste money on someone who won't become anything?" My sister made sure to remind us where we stood. "She can clean up the playroom," she'd say after her kids left behind a mess of snack wrappers and crayons. "It'll build character." And my daughter, without hesitation, would clean up quietly while the others played video games. Her school awards? Laughed at. "Oh, top of her class?" my father scoffed once. "That school must be pathetic if she's their best." Her handwriting certificate was torn up accidentally. Her drawing for the family fridge got replaced with my sister's son's scribble. Even the clothes she wore became jokes. "She looks like a little orphan," my sister whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. But then again, look at her mother. I wanted to speak. To defend her. To fight. But years of being shut down had trained me to stay silent. Every time I tried, I was reminded that we were only here out of pity. I was scared of being thrown out, of my daughter sleeping on the streets, of having nothing. But my daughter? She didn't cry. Not once. She'd come home from school, quietly do her chores, eat what was left, and then go up to our attic room. There, under the dim yellow light, she would pull out a small, leather-bound diary from under her pillow and start writing. Every single night. Words spilled from her pen like they were healing her. I once asked her what she was writing. She looked up and smiled faintly. "Just thoughts," she whispered. But I didn't know then. I didn't know those words were more than just thoughts. They were a plan. The day had finally arrived, my daughter's birthday. She had turned 11. 11 years of quiet resilience, of swallowing pain and offering smiles in return. I wanted this day to be different. Even if just for a few hours. So for weeks, I'd saved every coin, skipped meals, and even sold an old bracelet just to buy her a simple gift, nothing grand, just a small music box she had once admired in a shop window. I wrapped it carefully in colorful paper with a purple ribbon, her favorite color, and tucked a tiny note inside, "To my brightest light, keep shining." But I should have known better. My sister announced she was throwing a family gathering for the occasion. I was surprised but cautiously hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, they were turning a new leaf. I helped decorate the living room, laid out snacks, baked the cake myself, and dressed my daughter in the best outfit we had, an old frock I'd carefully washed and ironed to make it look new. Her eyes sparkled with quiet joy. She whispered, "Thank you, Mama," and hugged me like she hadn't done in months. The party began. Laughter, clinking glasses, fake smiles. My sister's kids tore through the snacks like wild animals while my daughter sat quietly, waiting for her turn. Then came the gift-giving moment. Everyone gathered around as I handed my daughter the little box with trembling hands. She looked up at me, her eyes shining, and slowly untied the ribbon. She lifted the lid, only to find it completely empty. Confused silence. Then I saw it. The smirk on my father's face. He turned to the room and said loudly, "Kids like her shouldn't expect anything. She's lucky she even has a roof over her head." My heart dropped. My sister leaned in, laughing, just like her mother, worthless. A few guests gave awkward chuckles. Others looked away. I stood frozen, every cell in my body burning with humiliation. My daughter stared at the empty box, her lips pressed together. Her small hands trembled as she closed the lid and set it aside. For a second, I thought she'd cry. But she didn't. Instead, she stood up, brushed her dress smooth, and walked over to my father with grace that didn't belong to someone so young. "It's okay," she said softly, "I got you something too, Grandpa." The room fell silent. Even my sister's kids paused mid-chew. My daughter reached into her pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. With steady hands, she held it out to my father. "Happy birthday to me," she said with a smile that was too calm. Too sure. My father took it, confused. "What is this?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, looking up at him, her eyes still damp but filled with something I couldn't recognize. Power. He slowly opened the envelope. And as he pulled out the paper inside, I saw it. The color drained from his face. His hands began to shake. Something inside that envelope had shattered everything he thought he controlled. The envelope felt light in his hands, but the moment my father pulled out the contents, the air in the room shifted. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the first page, a legal document, stamped, signed, and very real. His eyes darted over the words, and within seconds, all the arrogance drained from his face. The confident, cruel man who had mocked a child moments ago now stood pale, as if he had seen a ghost. Silence fell over the room like a curtain. What is this?" he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Everyone leaned in. The second paper slipped from the envelope, an old photograph. A younger version of my father stood next to a government official, shaking hands, smiling too wide. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the handshake, it was the land registry form in the background, caught in the frame, showing a name no one recognized at the time. Then came the third item, a letter, written in my daughter's neat handwriting. "Dear Grandpa, I know you never wanted me to have anything. But I wanted you to have the truth. This land you boast about, the one you threaten everyone over, it's not actually in your name. Years ago, you registered it under a fake name to hide your tax fraud. That name? You used the initials AS to cover your tracks. That's me. Ania Shah. Which means the land is mine now." Gasps. My sister dropped her glass. It shattered on the floor, but no one noticed. Her mouth opened, then shut, like she wanted to scream but couldn't find the words. My father's knees buckled slightly. He reached for the table to steady himself. "She's bluffing," he barked, his voice cracking. "This is fake." But one of the guests, a lawyer and an old friend of the family, stepped forward and picked up the document. He examined it closely. "It's legit," he said quietly. "Every signature, every seal, it checks out. This land is legally under her name." My father looked like he might faint. The same child he had mocked, humiliated, and disregarded had now just pulled the ground out from beneath his feet, literally. That land wasn't just property. It was his pride. His legacy. His empire. And now, it legally belonged to an 11-year-old girl he called worthless. My daughter didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just looked up at him and softly said, "You always said I don't deserve anything. I just wanted to prove you wrong." That single line sliced deeper than any insult ever could. And that was only the beginning. The living room was still frozen in disbelief, but my mind began to race back, trying to understand how. How did my little girl, my quiet, soft-spoken daughter, manage something so monumental without anyone noticing? The answer came in flashes, like pieces of a puzzle that had been right in front of me all along. Late nights when I thought she was asleep, I'd see her light on under the blanket, her small hand scribbling furiously into a notebook. I assumed it was her diary, a place to pour out her pain. But it was more than that. It was a plan. I remembered the day she came home from school with shining eyes and said, "Mama, Miss Sarah said I'm really smart." I had smiled, thinking it was a sweet compliment from a kind teacher. But what I didn't know was that Miss Sarah wasn't just praising her, she was listening, paying attention to a child who spoke very little but observed everything. When my daughter finally told her, in a soft whisper, "My family treats us bad, and I think my grandpa is hiding something big," Miss Sarah didn't ignore her. Instead, she gently connected her with a legal NGO that helped women and children in vulnerable situations. From there, the game had begun. Flashbacks painted a different version of the girl I tucked into bed each night. She wasn't just a silent sufferer, she was studying. She read property laws, learned about legal loopholes, asked questions no 11-year-old should even understand. Her little fingers flipped through old family files in the attic when everyone was asleep. She copied papers. She took pictures. She found the land registry tucked away in an old wooden box and realized her grandfather had used a fake name, never imagining that name could someday belong to her. I saw flashes of her quietly stepping into government offices, dressed in her neat school uniform, holding a folder almost as big as her chest. She smiled politely, introduced herself, asked for documents with rehearsed confidence. They helped her, thinking maybe she was running an assignment. No one suspected a child could be orchestrating something so bold. Every step she took was with grace, not vengeance. She didn't spit poison like the adults around her. She studied them, outsmarted them, and when the time came, she let the truth speak louder than any insult. And the most heartbreaking part? She did it all without ever telling me. Not because she didn't trust me, but because she didn't want me to carry the weight. She wanted to be my strength. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice, planned by a child who refused to be a victim. My daughter stood there, her shoulders back, her chin slightly raised, not in arrogance, but with calm authority. The room was suffocating with silence. My father's hands trembled, still holding the damning documents. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Before he could recover, my daughter, with the same softness she always carried, stepped forward. "Grandpa," she said gently, "I'm not here to kick you out. You can continue living there, but only if you start treating people better." Her words struck harder than a scream ever could. My father blinked, confusion etched across his face, trying to process what just happened. He looked around the room, searching for control, for power, for anything, but it was gone. The empire he once ruled wasn't his anymore, and the child he dismissed as nothing had taken the throne, not with anger, but with grace. The envelope still rested in his lap, filled with the truth. Land registry papers. Title documents. Legal affidavits. All ironclad, all registered in her name. His name wasn't anywhere. He had hidden the original deed under a fake identity to avoid taxes and hide shady deals, never imagining it could backfire this way. My sister's shrill voice broke through, "This is nonsense. She's just a child. This land belongs to our family." But my daughter was ready. "Not according to the law," she replied, reaching into her backpack and pulling out another set of documents. "You can check these too. Or ask your lawyer." My sister snatched the papers, her eyes darting across the pages. Her face turned white. Just then, my father tried his last lifeline. He pulled out his phone, dialed his lawyer, and put the call on speaker. "Tell them this isn't legal." A pause. Then the lawyer's voice echoed through the room, "I've reviewed everything. The documents are valid. The land is no longer yours. I warned you years ago about this." Silence again. My daughter didn't gloat. She didn't laugh or mock them the way they mocked her. She simply turned, took my hand, and stood beside me. The power shift wasn't loud, it was calm, dignified, and undeniable. The little girl they once called worthless was now the one holding the keys. We moved out of that toxic house, leaving behind the shadows of the past. My daughter's land had become our new foundation, literally. With the wealth from the land she now owned, we found a modest but beautiful place to call our own. For the first time in years, I felt the freedom to breathe, to build something positive, to start over. I returned to work, my daughter beside me every step of the way. She helped with the small things, making calls, managing paperwork, organizing my schedule. It was clear that the strength she showed during that battle wasn't a fluke, it was her nature. Her confidence, once buried under the weight of her family's cruelty, now flourished. Every day, I saw her become more and more of the person I knew she was meant to be. She excelled in school. Her grades soared, but it wasn't just the academic success that caught everyone's attention, it was her spirit. She no longer walked with her head down. Her eyes sparkled with ambition, and every step she took was filled with purpose. Meanwhile, my father's house stood unchanged, but the man who once commanded it had become a shadow of himself. He moved through his grand home, haunted by the very words he had once used to belittle his granddaughter. He never again mocked her, never again laughed at her. "My sister?" She started visiting us, but her smiles were forced, her tone hollow. She had no more power over us. She came not out of love, but desperation, hoping for some form of favor. The final blow came when my daughter stood on stage at her school's award ceremony, her name announced with pride. As I clapped, tears in my eyes, she delivered her speech. Her voice rang out clearly, "They tried to break me, but my mom taught me how to build." And just like that, the past was gone. We had one, not just for us, but for everyone who believed in us.